would sit, the Statistician-General would sit in the comfort he knows that I would not challenge him for his position. Not now or when it's up next time. But there are people who might, and also I wish to welcome, particularly, you know, the Statistician-General refers to the fieldwork team that we have, and that they've gone through training, provincial and other training, and they are ready to go and work. And so there are some of them here from Tshwane, but I also want to express a word of welcome. This is where the job starts. So these people standing in front is here to help you. The fact that the Statistician-General spoke here is to open up those doors and to make your work easier. And so you've seen this part of the work. We don't often see your part of the work, but during the census, many of us also went out and do that. So I wish you luck. The man at the helm of the program is Werner, and I will invite Werner to come and give us his presentation. After Werner has spoken, we'll open up for questions and answers. Questions mostly, and the panel here will answer. Yandi is responsible for answering all of the questions. And then we will invite Patrick thereafter. Werner.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Werner Ruch. I'm the project director for this Income and Expenditure Survey 2022-2023. I think it's very special that we formally launch the data collection phase of this very, very important project, as was so clearly articulated by our Statistician General on the first day of his new contract. I hope that you will continue to hold this project special in your heart. We, as the team, will do everything in our power to make sure that this is a tremendous success for the organization. The SG opened, and he provided a very detailed understanding of how this project fits into this, the strategic objectives of the organization, and how the survey objectives of collecting this information to feed into CPI and poverty and inequality will translate to the betterment of this country through the reporting on the NDP or the Sustainable Development Goals and whatnot. My presentation will mainly just focus on a bit more of the nuts and bolts of this project to give you a better sense of what this project is and how data collection will actually play out over the next 12 months. Once funding had been received from National Treasury, and as the SG had indicated, it was a tremendous back and forth effort with National Treasury to ensure that we had sufficient funding to do this. Once you see the methodology that we have to undertake, I think you will better understand why this is among one of the most expensive surveys that any statistical agency can undertake around the world. And I see we've got some team stuff happening. Okay. So this just gives you an overview of the governance structure of the project that we put in place once the project was launched. It is primarily driven by 4 different work streams looking at different technical aspects of the project. There is a technical committee that ensures that everything we do complies to regulation, complies to the methodological standards entailed in household expenditure surveys, and complies to the statistical standards as set forth by this organization. Overall, the project is governed by a management committee, and that management committee is then supported by a project steering committee which oversees and provides oversight to the project. Project, I myself report to DDG Mpacheni as the acting DDG for Population and Social Stats, who reports to Statistics Executive Committee. The SG gave a bit of this slide. I'm going to unpack it a little bit further. As he said, we'll be conducting it over 12 months, starting next week, Monday, in exactly a week, and running up until about the end of 2023. Households are sampled for a period of 6 weeks. Now, this is where we already see the deviation from other household surveys. This country has just undergone the massive census 2022. And so all households have been exposed to the statistical data collection process. And what they will have familiar is that whether they chose whatever mode, it was a once off. You say, okay, I'll do it face to face. Someone came to your house, you answered some questions, they said thank you, and they left, and you didn't see them again. Maybe you got visited for a control visit afterwards for reconciliation as part of the post-enumeration survey, but the survey usually has just one visit. This survey, to collect the data that we need to collect, requires a duration of time, and we spend actually a total of about 6 weeks with households. 2 of those first weeks is dedicated to publicity efforts, to inform the household and to inform the community in which the household lives that will be conducting data collection in this area, and then 4 weeks of actual data collection. And I'll unpack a bit more of what those 4 weeks look like later on. We use a combination of diary and recall methods to collect this information, and this is in line with international best practices. The organization moved to this methodology in 2005-06 when we re-engineered the IES, and it has remained the dominant.
I need you to, there are people on the other side. Apologies that you've put off during that. And then you can continue, otherwise the other people don't hear you. Now go back to yours. Okay, now go back to yours.
No, I think it's being shared at a separate point. Diary and recall. What do we mean by diary and recall? Recall means we ask households to recall expenditure and acquisitions they have made. Diary is a real-time tool where they capture their acquisitions, and that is done through these expenditure diaries, which they have to complete for a period of 2 weeks. We visit the household about 4 times, once per week over those 4 weeks. And in each visit, we administer a module of the household questionnaire. In the SG's presentation, you saw the range of content that he spoke about when he talked about the expenditure and the living conditions and the income and all those topics. All those sections are broken off across 4 modules in our household questionnaire. And these questionnaires are administered primarily through face-to-face using CAPI technology. And in cases where we cannot do the CAPI, we use CATI, which is the telephonic method of data collection. Now, something essential about this survey is the relationship that we build with the household. Because the types of questions that we ask are among the most sensitive and private questions that any household can share. We want to better understand how you are spending your money, what you are spending your money on, and all the income that you have earned. And these are always very, very sensitive topics, even sometimes sensitive within households themselves, which can then make it difficult and requires a very complex process to engage with the household and to prepare the household for the work. So publicity is essential. And we have a dedicated publicity team that will do this work. And their goal is not only to ensure high response rates, but to ensure as well, and I think we've lost our colleagues again. Well, this third time's the charm. See, as long as it, with the SG's presentation, didn't go poorly, that's the only one that's going to be replayed on SABC and all the news stations tonight. So these hiccups is not gonna influence anything. So to ensure the high response rates, but there's another challenge. Because we have to come back over multiple visits, this is one of the only surveys where we actually experience dropouts, where a household could start, but then halfway through they're like, you know what, this is too much. Next time you come, I'm just gonna pretend I'm not there, gonna hide. And so then we have this thing called dropouts. And if we have not collected enough information from those households, then unfortunately those households generally have to be disqualified during the data analysis process. So it's essential that we keep these households on board, and the way we keep these households on board is to make sure that they fully understand exactly what they're signing up for, and fully understand the scope of the survey itself. Now, to further the necessity for this trusting relationship that we need to foster, this rapport with households, you know, I mentioned some of these sensitive issues. Now, if we think about some expenditure, you know, often many people think of some items as what we call sin expenditure, whether it be gambling or alcohol or tobacco, or I guess you could extrapolate to illegal things as well. And this survey aims to measure all of these things. Often it is sometimes hard for individuals to report this information. In fact, alcohol and tobacco is one of the most underreported areas when it comes to expenditure. And we have to often look to external data sources as well to complement the IES data because households tend to underreport it. Income information is another one. People are very, very concerned about income. I think one of the main concerns is they say, if I tell you, guess what, you're going to go tell SARS, and then SARS is knocking on my door and I've got more tax exposure that I wasn't prepared for. And one of the core fundamental parts of this survey, of any survey conducted by this organization, is the full commitment to protecting the confidentiality of our respondents. Not just our commitment, but our requirement by law from the Stats Act of Act 6 of 1999 protects our respondents to ensure that no information we collect can be shared with these other agencies. So one of the key messages we hope the media will send out is that even if this covers very sensitive issues, this is not information that will then end up in other people's hands. If you're buying illegal things, we need to know about it because that is how you're spending your money. And we're not going to tell the police. If you get income from other sources that you haven't claimed your taxes on, tell us so that we have a clear picture of the understanding of the household economy in this country. But, you know, your business with SARS is your business with SARS on the side. As we say, we don't get in the middle of that. So the reason for this is ultimately it determines how we approach the methodology. We cannot have different people coming back to the same household. If I had come today to visit Trevor and ask him questions, and then tomorrow Yandi comes to ask Trevor questions, and on the next day Patrick comes to ask him for the third interview, Trevor's never going to feel comfortable with the information he's giving out. Because we leave income towards the end because we know it is the most sensitive topic. So by the end of the process, you're familiar and you're comfortable with me so that when I come back, you're willing to share this information. So what that means is a traditional sweeping methodology, which is commonly used because it's one of the most cost-effective ways of doing data collection, is not something that we can fully implement. But one of the benefits of moving to a digital space, to a digital collection model, is that we can improve this what we call a team approach. So rather than linking a survey officer to a PSU, we can now directly link survey officers to points. So we can ensure that this is the same survey officer that works with the same household through the duration of the data collection period, without needing to link it at the higher geographical level. So what does this team approach mean? So because we have a team approach, we actually have 3 teams of survey officers working concurrently and in parallel with one another. So the whole survey is structured around that diary keeping period. Remember we said there's 2 weeks of keeping diary. So those 2 weeks of diary keeping are unique across the full year. So we have 26 2-week periods. And around that we build the rest of the data collection process. So at any one point in time, you'll have one group of survey officers maybe engaging in regular data collection, another one's engaging in diary, and then some others may be working in the office doing coding. In terms of the survey instruments, there are 3 survey instruments that we use for the data collection process. The first is a household questionnaire. The household questionnaire is made up of 4 modules and 28 sections and about 1,000 questions, which is why we have to break it up. You cannot answer all that in one sitting. It is not possible. Plus, when we try, we find that households are not very good at recalling. So when we finish one interview, we say, when we come next week, these are the things we're going to ask you about. Your house, so you can get your bond statements ready. We're going to ask you about services. Can you get your utility bills ready? We're going to ask you about your car, so if you had any recent services done or anything like that. So we can prepare them so that when we visit, we can streamline the interview process to be as efficient as possible to put as little burden on the respondents that are participating in this survey. We also have the weekly diary. As I said, we have 2 weeks of diary, which means each household completes 2 weekly diaries. And this tracks all acquisitions that occur during that period in real time. We also provide personal diaries to household members because sometimes some household members don't really want it publicly known. Maybe the child has bought some cigarettes while he was at school that he doesn't want the parents to know about. So we give them individual diaries that allow them to record this information and provide it to the field worker so that it could be added to the diary behind the scenes without causing any intra-household stress or complications. And then lastly, we have a COICO code book, which is used by our survey officers to code each and every item captured in the diary. And as the SG mentioned, we have just updated to the 2018 COICO provisions as published by the United Nations. So we are now working with the latest classification system for this survey. Just as a sense of sort of the reference periods that we work with, there's multiple goods. We could talk about non-durable goods, which is sort of like your food, semi-durable goods, which is like clothing, durable goods, which are those like your furniture, beds, things like that. So each of these items we track in different tools for different types of reference periods. In terms of the data collection approaches, we have 3, and this is now, as I said, this is the boring stuff. This is the stuff that we, as the implementers of household expenditure surveys, get excited about. This is the stuff we like to train our staff on because it's so critical to understand when do you apply what in the process. Just for you guys to know, there are 3 different methods, so depending on the type of item and how it was acquired, it will then determine how and what we record. So maybe let me give one example of a sort of a nuance. If you leave here today and you're part of our sample and you go stop at at Spar on your way home and you buy, buy 3 fish. I don't know if Spar sells fish independently, but let's just say they do. You buy 3 fish and you take it home and you put it in your freezer. On that day, you would record the acquisition of those fish, all 3. But now let's say we go to a rural household. They don't go to Spar, they go right down to the river to get their own fish. So they catch 3 fish and they bring it back into the household and they decide, okay, we're going to cook 1 tonight and we're going to put the other 2 in the freezer. Now, this would require a different approach, the consumption approach, which would say that we only record the fish that was consumed, not the 2 that was put in the freezer. We only capture those when those are eaten. So these nuances they seem complex, and they are, but this is exactly why we have a very complicated and lengthy training process, so that we can prepare respondents to fully understand exactly what to apply and when to apply it, so that we ensure the data we get is robust and correct. So how will fieldwork operations work? We have a team of publicity officers, and these POs are based in each district across South Africa's 9 provinces. And they will conduct publicity at various levels prior to the data collection period. So they will conduct gatekeeper publicity, where they engage with those that have access to the different areas we need to work in. They'll conduct publicity in communities, and ultimately, at the end of the day, in the households that have been sampled. After the publicity phase is done, the households are visited by a survey officer. And this survey officer, as I've spoken about, will then come and stay with that household for 4 weeks, administering a different module each week from the household questionnaire, as well as to train them on how to do the diary, because the diary is a self-enumeration tool. We leave it with the household, and they capture it, and we collect it at the end of the week and capture it into our tools. And where households are illiterate, where households have trouble being able to complete these things, we provide support through our survey staff to facilitate that data collection process. The POs and the SOs are managed by district survey coordinators who are based in the district offices. And these DSCs report both to the district manager, which is a permanent Statistician employee that oversees the operations in our district offices, as well as to the corresponding provincial office, where they report to a provincial survey coordinator. These DSCs then also report within to the project structure and get support from head office team like myself and others, many in the room, during the course of the survey. So this is now a breakdown. Now don't worry, I'm not going to take you through the whole thing, but this just shows the breakdown of what happens across the 4 weeks, or across the 6 weeks. The first column shows what happens before the data collection we call pre-week 1. And this is where we undertake navigation to the point, we do unpacking to make sure we establish how many households are at that DU, and then we conduct the publicity that we need to conduct to make sure that the household buys into this process and fully understands what is going to transpire over the remaining 4 weeks. During week 1, which is the first week that the survey officer visits, this is where the survey officer trains the household on the diary completion, leaves a copy of the diary, a paper diary with the households, and then we'll administer module 1 of the interview. And then there's a lot of stuff that happens in the back office on the administrative side when it comes to quality assurance and these things. Weeks 2 and 3 are the diary keeping periods. So during those 2 weeks, we're administering modules 2 and 3, but also administering diary week 1, diary week 2. And then we complete in week 4 with the last module. As I mentioned, we put income specifically in that last module so that if households are reluctant to share, and this is from my experience of more than 16 years working in this organization, income is the number one thing that households refuse to give information on. So we leave it right till the end, so just in case we don't get it, we have all the expenditure information, which is so critical for CPI purposes and so critical for poverty and inequality measurements. So this just shows maybe the changes over the last 5 large-scale surveys. If you remember, the SG had that beautiful roadmap where he showed how the surveys have evolved over time. And so this just gives some more detail on exactly how we have evolved since 2006. You will see that the big changing points were around 2008-9, which we introduced the first living conditions survey, and also then for the IES 2010-11, which is when government was hit by severe budget cuts, and it forced the organization to take a hard look at how we implement our surveys in a more cost-effective manner. And we made tremendous improvements. Previously, it was 4 weeks of diaries. Now it's just 2. So the burden on households is less, and it translates also into a more effective and productive fieldwork force. We increased survey officer output by 50% with the innovations that we introduced, and these innovations have carried forward now into the current survey, the IES 22-23. Now I'm just going to close my last 2 slides, or just give some feedback on where this is going to be conducted. We've already said that we'll cover all provinces, including all settlement types in those provinces. So the survey is drawn from a sampling frame, the same sampling frame that we use for other household surveys, whether it be the General Household Survey, the Quarterly Labor Force Survey, or the many other ones conducted by this organization. We'll produce national, provincial, and metro level estimates. That will be comparable to the data collected since 2005. We have other products down the line where we try to do small area estimation techniques to start drilling down to those other ones, but at the core, what the survey can produce is at those levels. And this is where we'll be going. So we have a total of about 3,318 PSUs, or what we call primary sampling units, which are spread around the country. And within those 3,318, we have sampled 31,042 dwelling units. Now, in some dwelling units, we encounter multiple households. So on average, we expect around 32,000 households to participate. As you can see, the majority of households are located right here in Gauteng. It makes up about just under a third of the sample. But Gauteng, when we look at the data, Gauteng accounts for about 39.8% of all household expenditure in the country. Out of every R1 spent in South Africa, 40 cents is spent here in Gauteng. And so the success of operations in Gauteng is critical to ensuring that we have a robust picture. But of course, Gauteng is one of these areas where it's very difficult to always gain access. We've seen very large samples as well in KZN, Eastern Cape, as well as Limpopo and Western Cape, with the smallest sample being contained within the Northern Cape, as it is one of the provinces with the smallest population share. So these 31,042 dwelling units will be visited over the next 12 months, and we hope that through this event where you can publicize and raise awareness for it, that when we knock on their doors, that they say, we've heard of you, we understand why you are here, and we will let you in, because we understand everything that the SG outlined in terms of how this feeds into poverty, inequality, and the CPI, and even the international accounts. That those outputs are essential, and we need robust information. So with that, I thank you very much. I don't have an exciting story about thank you. It's just thank you.
Perhaps you don't need an exciting story. Werner, thank you very much. I know that apart from the fact that the survey, the instruments, etc.,